Today we're going to make cookies. We're going to start out with shortbread cookies. This is a real crowd pleaser. It's fairly simple. It doesn't have a lot of ingredients. We use white rice flour, cornstarch, potato starch, and tapioca flour. And then we also add icing sugar and butter. There always has to be butter in shortbread cookies. Mixing gluten-free baked goods is fairly simple. It's a little more forgiving than wheat products because you don't have any gluten that you can develop. So let's start by putting all the flours together in the mixing bowl. It's fairly forgiving as long as we try and keep the dry ingredients separate from the wet ingredients. So we've got our flour mixture here first, and then we've added our icing sugar. And directly on top of that, we can add our butter. We don't need to do anything special with the butter, but it should be about room temperature. So we're going to put it into our mixer, and it's going to mix until you get sort of a meal type consistency. This can be done by hand. We're just going to let it go. If you want to do it by hand, take a large bowl, start with your flour and sugar mixture, put your butter in, and just knead with your hands until you get the type of consistency that you want. This way, in the mixer, it's going to take probably about 10 minutes. But you'll know because it pulls away from the sides and it comes out to the consistency of a coarse meal. The way you can test it is to put your hand in, grab some, and if it sticks together, then it's ready to go. So if you're doing this with kids, this is the part that they want to be involved in. They can't do anything wrong, they can't overmix it, and then they can help decorate as well. This is always a cookie that's made in our house around Christmas time. And when I started making them at the bakery, my one daughter got quite upset because we weren't doing this anymore at home. And this was sort of a Christmas ritual. So you can see as I'm mixing this with my hands, it's coming together quite nicely. It's the warmth of your hands and getting the butter to hold together with the flours and the sugar. So this just takes a moment. It doesn't take a lot of space. It doesn't really take a lot of effort. But you can feel it coming together and it feels really nice. It's sort of like Play-Doh. It's not sandy or gritty in any way. It's nice and soft and velvety. So once you get it to this type of consistency, we're now ready to go. What you're going to do is make a small ball. You can roll it out. It's harder to roll out because it does want to break apart. And the warmth of your hands as you're rolling it will hold it together. Now in the bakery, we strictly made them 22 grams. That's 22 grams. You can make them any size you want. I like consistency. It helps them bake off as well. So once we get these ready, we're going to be baking them off at 300 degrees. They take about 26 to 30 minutes. This is one cookie that it doesn't hurt if you overbake a little bit. The amount of butter that's in them ends up being sort of a browned butter cookie taste. So they go from a shortbread to sort of almost a little caramely. One of my daughters, whenever we overbake them at the bakery, would always swoop in and take the overbaked ones that we didn't want to sell because those were the ones she really loved. So don't worry if you overbake them. So once we get these on the pan, we're going to decorate them. I have some sprinkles and I also have some colored sugar. These are both gluten-free. You always have to read the ingredients on them to make sure that they're gluten-free. But I know that these are gluten-free. And if you're concerned, there's lots of other things that you can decorate them with. I know when my mother used to make these cookies when I was young, she would take candied cherries. And of course it was Christmas, so she'd take green and red candied cherries and make small little bits and put them on the tops of the cookies. You can decorate them with other candied peel. You can use cranberries. You can use any type of sprinkles. And another thing that you want to do with these cookies is you can add flavors to them. These are plain shortbread, but you can certainly feel free to add lemon zest, add lemon flavoring, orange. You can add cinnamon to them. There's lots of different things that you can do with these cookies, and they're so easy and there's so few ingredients in them. And normally in a gluten-free kitchen, you'd have these ingredients at hand. There's nothing exotic in these. Now, this is going to make about 30 cookies. Every cookie recipe I'm using is always adaptable to put the cookie dough into the freezer. So once we get these cookies ready to go, without the sprinkles on them, these can go directly in the freezer, and you can even bake them off from frozen, which is really good. If you've got somebody coming over who needs to eat gluten-free, there's nothing better than coming into a house where there's fresh baked cookie smell. And just think, you haven't even had to do it that day. You can just make a big recipe of these and bake them off as you need them. I like using a fork to flatten them. And the reason I like using a fork is so that the sprinkles can stay on the top. You don't have to use a fork, but I think that way you know they're homemade. And you don't lose as many sprinkles. So we just cross-hatch with the fork. These cookies will spread out. They won't spread out completely flat, so you don't have to worry too much. If this batter, if the dough is very moist, you can use a little bit of icing sugar to put on the fork so that it doesn't stick to them. So then again, this is what the kids really like to do. Just sprinkles. And candied sugar, all in different colors. And everybody knows who made what, and everybody's proud of the ones that they made. So these are going to go now in a 300-degree oven for about 20 minutes. You can't rush them. You'll know they're ready when they just go a little brown on the edges. So the cookies bake for about 20 minutes. They may bake as long as 25, 26, 27 minutes, depending on your oven. These are some I made earlier. As you can see, they go a little flatter into nice rounds, and the sprinkles stay on them really well because they sort of melt into the butter as they bake. So you want to let them cool completely before you eat them, and they do firm up a lot. So they look so pretty on a plate, and they're so good to eat. So nice and buttery.